drawing some who've never protested before.
Breaking. She was working the night shift. Minimum wage, no security guard, no panic button. In less than 2 minutes, Ryan Sky White was stabbed 23 times in a corridor so narrow 2 people couldn't walk past each other. She was 27. She was doing her job. She was promised she'd be safe. She wasn't. And when the country woke up, it realised something terrifying. This could have been prevented. If you've ever worked a late shift, a hotel, a hospital, a store, subscribe now, because what happened at the Red Bridge Inn is about all of us. It's September. The Red Bridge Inn sits on an ordinary road in the West Midlands. 2 stories, affordable rooms, budget price. In recent years, the government converted it into migrant accommodation under an emergency contract. Ryan checked in guests, answered phones, folded linen, stretched wages that barely covered rent. On the night of the killing, at 9:05 p.m, a man staying under government asylum placement walked past her desk. Calm, unremarkable. Minutes later, in the service corridor behind reception, everything changed. The weapon was a screwdriver, taken from a maintenance room, left unsecured. The violence was frenzied, intimate, confined to a space barely wide enough for 2 bodies. By the time another staff member reached the corridor, Ryan was bleeding on the tiles. Paramedics arrived fast, but some things move faster than ambulances. News travels faster, anger travels faster. Fear travels fastest of all. Across the road, Ryan's colleague, Chloe Bennett, lifted her phone with shaking hands. She recorded 1 sentence, sent it live. She was just doing her job. Why did she have to be the one who died? By midnight, that clip had been watched 3 million times. The hotel, where no one ever expected national attention, became the place where a single tragedy demanded answers far beyond its walls. But here's what made this different than other tragedies. It was preventable. The government had promised risk assessments. They said the building was secure. Staff were told, everything is checked, you're safe. So where was the security guard? Why was the maintenance room unlocked? Why wasn't there a panic button behind the desk? And the bigger question, who made the decision to place asylum seekers and regular staff side by side in a budget hotel with minimal oversight, then told everyone it was fine? Within 1 hour, the street outside filled with neighbours in dressing gowns. Friends arrived clutching flowers from an all-night petrol station. They came to make sense of a woman they'd spoken to hours earlier. Now she was gone. But then something shifted. Cars pulled up from Dudley, Wolverhampton, Birmingham. People who didn't know Ryan, but who knew something else. The endless news stories about migrant hotels. The repeated assurances from officials that everything was under control. The constant feeling that decisions were being made about their towns without anyone asking what it felt like to live there. Handmade signs appeared, not slogans, accusations. She worked, you gambled. Security is not paperwork, it is people. If this was your daughter, would this be acceptable? By early morning, one small town was trending at the top of every platform. By noon, it wasn't just one town anymore. In Belfast, crowds formed outside migrant accommodation. In Leeds, a protest that started with dozens doubled, then doubled again. In London, thousands moved toward Westminster Bridge, toward the buildings where asylum decisions are made. 150,000 people. Same rhythm beneath every gathering. Local loss, shared betrayal. A country asking, how did we get here? But as the story spread, so did the versions of it. Some focused only on the suspect's immigration status, turning tragedy into fuel for a border control argument. Others focused only on government failure, pointing at the contracts that turned hotels into emergency warehouses. Online, videos were manipulated, captions rewritten, context removed. A small group of protesters throwing objects was captioned as asylum seekers attack. Police pushing back demonstrators became either state-crushing dissent or heroically protecting the vulnerable, depending on who posted it. The truth was in there somewhere, but it was drowning in noise. And yet, underneath all the competing narratives, one thing didn't change. A young woman was dead, because of choices made by people in offices far away. The officers managing the crowds weren't facing a simple, organised protest. They were standing between grief, fury, fear, and opportunism. Many of them had families working late shifts, relatives in care homes, partners in hospitals. Some had served overseas. Some had family members who came to the country as refugees. The initial approach was soft. Standard uniforms, no riot gear, no batons. Officers spoke to stewards, redirected traffic, tried to keep things from escalating. But as more people arrived, the temperature rose. A bottle flew. Someone pushed hard. An angry shout became a scuffle. Police adjusted, helmets on, shields raised. forming tighter lines. Inside control rooms, commanders watched dozens of screens, each showing a different city dealing with the same story. The message passed between them was simple. Do not let the crowds reach the hotel lobbies. Prevent a second tragedy. And they did. But at street level, viewers saw a wall of shields and read it as opposition, not protection. Inside the Red Bridge Inn, people who had already survived violence in other countries now listened as a new country's anger rose around their rooms. They peered through curtains at crowds chanting outside. They watched police lines stand between them and people who might blame them for a crime they had not committed. To them, the Red Bridge Inn didn't feel like a political failure. It felt like a trap. Between every perspective stood the staff. The cleaning teams, reception workers, security guards. They were told that risk assessments had been carried out, that the building was safe, that everything was under control. Each time a news channel said, secure accommodation, it cut deeper. Because they knew exactly how much protection there had been in that corridor. Not enough to save a single life. When the government finally responded, its words felt written in a different country. A spokesperson stood at a lectern in London. Deep sadness at the loss of life. A promise of a full review. A statement of continued commitment to compassion. Praise for emergency services. A request for calm. On paper, it checked every box. In practice, it missed the point entirely. People outside hotels didn't want more committees. They didn't want reports circulating in quiet corridors months later. They wanted someone in power to say plainly, we failed. Not in vague terms, not about one isolated worker, but about an entire system that told people to trust it, then didn't earn that trust. In the absence of that acknowledgement, the gap widened. The convoy of dark cars moving away from Westminster that evening, windows tinted, police motorcycles clearing the way, became its own message. Edited side by side with shots of shivering protesters holding candles, it told a story no official briefing could undo. In the days that followed, commentators kept returning to the same idea. The events around the Red Bridge Inn had opened a ledger the country had been avoiding. On one side sat the numbers governments liked to publish. Total spent on emergency accommodation, asylum decisions completed, hotel beds converted. On the other side sat things that can't be tallied easily. The fear experienced by a night worker walking down a corridor alone. The anxiety of residents wondering if they're safe in their rooms. The brittle trust of neighbours who feel policies are being implemented in their streets without regard for their input. When 150,000 people surround hotels and government buildings in a single day, holding up photographs and flowers and hand-painted signs, they are not presenting a spreadsheet. They are presenting a bill. It is a demand. Stop hiding behind statistics. Address the simple question underneath. Who is actually being protected by the current arrangement? And who is being asked to carry the risk quietly? As the immediate protests eased, a different scene emerged. Volunteers stayed behind to clear rubbish from streets, carry away broken glass, scrub graffiti from walls. Local churches opened doors for anyone needing silence. Lifelong residents, recent arrivals, police officers coming off long shifts, staff from the hotel overwhelmed by what they'd witnessed. Candles were lit. Handwritten notes invited people to pray, to think, to simply breathe. At the rear entrance of the Red Bridge Inn, a small memorial grew each day. Bouquets wrapped in plastic, messages on scrap paper and greeting cards. Thank you for your kindness. We should have kept you safe. Your name will not be forgotten. Someone spray-painted a sentence on the nearby wall that began appearing in photographs across the country. Compassion is the last line of defence. For once, it didn't feel like a slogan. It felt like a warning. This night was never just about one hotel or one crime. It exposed something deeper. A country that talks about protection, yet too often fails the people who depend on it most. While leaders speak under bright lights, ordinary workers stand alone on late shifts, hoping the system that promised to guard them actually will. The real question isn't about immigration policy, or border control, or asylum procedures. It's simpler than that. It's this: what kind of country are we building? One that protects everyone properly, or one that asks some people to carry the risk quietly while others get to leave at 5 o'clock? Right now, somewhere, someone is working a late shift. Maybe they're afraid too. If you believe this story matters, that what happened to Ryan shouldn't become normal, share this video. Not to start an argument, but to start a conversation. Comment below, what should actually change? Who failed first and why? Your answer matters. Drop it in the comments so your voice becomes part of this reckoning. And if you want to follow what actually comes next, because this is far from over, subscribe. The real consequences of this night are only just beginning.